Good morning, dear colleagues. It's my pleasure to participate in this workshop and share our experience concerning the development of occupational qualification system in my country, and particularly the development of occupational qualification councils. In different countries, these councils have somewhat different names, although basically in the EU, the term sectoral councils is adopted, but I'm still using throughout my presentation the notion of occupational qualification councils, which is laid down in our national legislation. I do hope you can see my slide, yeah?
Yes, very well. Thank you, Olav.
Thank you. So I'll start from the Estonian Qualifications Authority, or its trademark in Estonian is Kutsekoda, and Kutsekoda has been established already nearly 20 years ago, based on the Occupational Qualifications Act. But these councils we are talking about were at least partially established already 4 years earlier, in 1997, and this has been the initiative of the Estonian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So initially, the occupational qualification system developed, so to say, illegally under the auspices of the Estonian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. But in 2001, the Estonian Parliament adopted the Occupational Qualifications Act, and since then it has been, let's say, officially recognized and legalized system in my country. So Kutsekoda itself is a private legal entity, a foundation, and the founding fathers of this foundation were the same Estonian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Estonian Confederation of Employers and Industry, similar to the organization which has organized this nice workshop today, two trade union type organizations, and from the government side, initially the Minister of Social Affairs was one of the 5 founding fathers, so to say. 4 years later, in 2005, the Minister of Education and Research was, let's say, closely involved, and in a way, Kutsekoda since then, during the last 15 years, is working in most close relationship with the Minister of Education and Research, not being a structural unit of the ministry, still a private legal entity, but we have, let's say, contractual basis for our close cooperation. And 5 years ago, the Minister of Economy and Communications has been also included into the list of the institutions which are governing the activities of Kutsekoda. So what are the functions of Kutsekoda? In the legal act, the list is somewhat longer, but basically 4 important functions. First, serving as a support structure for the whole occupational qualification system, and particularly coordinating the activities of 14 occupational qualifications councils, and also, what is really important, the ad hoc working groups which are developing occupational qualification standards. The second function is providing counseling and assistance to awarding bodies which are actually conducting, assessing, validating, and certifying competence of persons. important function is also keeping the register of occupational qualifications, which is one part of our national qualifications register. And finally, we are responsible for developing the labor and skills anticipation system, OSKA, which has been an important part of our activities during the last 5 years. Besides this, already during 12 years since the establishment of EQF, Kutsekoda is also the national coordination point for the EQF implementation in Estonia, and also national point for vocational qualifications, the national reference point for vocational qualifications. Also an Estonian Europass Center, and then we are also support structure for EPALE. So a couple of words about the guiding principles we have been following. So conceptually, it is very important that we consider qualification system as an interface between the society and the system for lifelong learning, which is substantially wider than just the system of education or system of formal education. On the other hand, occupational qualifications system Kutsekoda is basically dealing with is a subsystem of the, let's say, national qualification system. And in turn, it is an interface between the labor market and the system for lifelong learning. And as you understand, our focal point is occupational qualification or occupational qualifications, which means all kinds of qualifications associated with trade, occupation, or profession. We are not specifically emphasizing, let's say, professions or vocations. So therefore, let's say a neutral term, occupational qualification, is used. And what is also fairly important, especially in the beginning, we've been mainly concentrating on occupational qualifications gained outside the, let's say, formal education system, basically work-based qualification. And as a central guiding principle, social partnership of all labor market stakeholders, which you could follow already looking the list of our founding fathers. So graphically, the role and place of occupational qualification system as an interface between the labor market and the world of lifelong learning is described on this slide under the title of Competence Circle. There are two main processes going on. The upper one is extracting the expectations of the labor market on competent employees and formalizing them as occupational qualification standards, which can be used for two purposes, for developing, as an input for developing different study programs in formal and non-formal learning, but also directly for assessing, validating, and certifying person's competence, which is a lower avenue. Concerning the occupational qualification system in my country, it currently consists or is divided into 14 sectors, which hasn't been the case from the very beginning. Initially, the number was less. In 2001, 16 councils were established, and 5 years ago we slightly reorganized the picture, and since then we have 14 sectors and 14 occupational qualifications councils. In a way, each sector is functioning more or less like an autonomous occupational qualification system for the sector, fulfilling three major and developing occupational qualification standards for the sector. On the other hand, awarding occupational qualifications in the sector, and probably a minor function being issuing licenses for the awarding bodies in the sector. Since 2008, the board of chairmen of Occupational Qualification Councils has been established to coordinate the activities of these, let's say, almost autonomous sectoral subsystems. As a support structure, Kutsekoda employs currently 5 people called coordinators who are administering the activities of Occupational Qualifications Councils and also supporting working groups developing occupational qualification standards based on a unified methodology. What is important from the, let's say, financial point of view is that the members of these councils do not receive payment. So in a way, this is serving society, and this activity is not paid. Only participating in these ad hoc working groups which are developing occupational qualification standards is a paid work. So the organizational and functional structure of our system is described on this slide. So Kutsekoda as a support or background institution supporting this large and highly decentralized system, where, let's say, the main players are the Occupational Qualifications Councils, as I said, 14 of them, the awarding bodies, which get their licenses from the councils, and the number of these bodies is substantially larger, over 100, and most of them, 107, are basically different professional associations which serve as awarding bodies, and gradually the number of education and training providers as awarding bodies has increased, but this hasn't been the case from the very beginning. And finally, under the awarding bodies, Occupational Qualifications Council committees are responsible for developing, let's say, assessment standards, which are then implemented by assessment committees, already assessing and validating the competence of persons which are seeking this validation and certification. This is the list of occupational qualification councils right now, and the list has been approved by the governmental decree and can be amended also by the government, but we currently don't foresee any need for these amendments. This list doesn't correspond any, let's say, official international qualification, either occupations or education or economic fields of economic development. It is just a pragmatic solution trying to cover, on one hand, all the fields of national economy and then divide more or less equally the workload between different sectors. Concerning the composition of these councils, there are two aspects. Institutional aspect, question which institutions should be represented there, and the list of institutions represented in a particular council is approved by the Minister of Education and Research, and usually there are 10 to 15 institutions involved, in some occasions even less than 10. And the persons representing institutions are initially nominated by the institutions themselves, and the management board of Kutsekoda approves the list of persons included into the councils. Again, a tripartite model is applied concerning the institutions and persons involved. What is important concerning the functionality of occupational qualifications councils is that in case of vocational education and training, according to our national legislation, for them it is compulsory to use occupational qualification standards as an input for developing different study programs, both initial and continuous study programs. It is not compulsory for higher education, but in cases where the respective standards are available, they use it also as an input for developing study program in higher education. As an example, here you just see the composition of the Occupational Qualifications Council in Information and Communication Technology, and you can see that, let's say, on one hand, professional associations, like Estonian Association of Electronics Engineers, but also associations of employers like Estonian Association of Information Technology and Telecommunications, but also education and training providers. Records Council is just, let's say, umbrella institutions. Actually, persons representing education and training providers are representatives of those, let's say, departments who are dealing with particular study programs in the field of ICT. Concerning awarding bodies, as I already said, they are mainly professional associations dealing with all the procedures of assessing, validating, and certifying a person's competence. Again, the proportional representation of stakeholders is followed. And finally, I would like to, let's say, touch upon the OSKA program, which has been our major activity concerning further development of occupational qualification system in my country during the last 5 years. So, in a way, what I are doing right now, or have been doing already during the last 5 years, is extending the occupational qualification system, which consists with a, let's say, more or less established part with let's say, two major processes, developing occupational qualification standards and assessing, validating, and certifying persons' competence. So this part of the system is basically dealing with a qualitative aspect of qualifications, which kind of competence profiles are needed on the labor market. And now we are extending the system, adding a quantitative aspect. So we are analyzing profoundly the need for labor in let's say, main occupations and professions in different sectors of the labor market, and trying to, let's say, look forward 5 to 10 years. And also we are strengthening our link to the society, to informing not only the education and training providers, but also informing the society at large about the expected needs in labor quantitatively, and changes in the skills anticipation. Not going into the details of this interesting system, officially this Estonian acronym OSKA is referring to anticipating and monitoring labor and skills demand. But what is important in today's context, we are talking about, let's say, sectoral councils. So a conscious political decision 5 years ago has been to develop initially this OSKA system autonomously, or more or less independently from the already existing occupational qualification system. And in the frame of this OSKA system, we have gradually established sectoral expert panels, which are, let's say, the most important bodies in this OSKA system. They are dealing, or let's say, governing and also participating in these case studies concerning different sectors, and revealing these skills and labor need for the forthcoming 5 to 10 years. So somewhat different concept, sectoral expert panels involved in parallel with the Occupational Qualification Councils. So graphically, the OSKA governance structure looks like this. So on the lower level, we have right now already more than 20 sectoral expert panels. So one aspect is that the nomenclature of these sectors is different from these 14 sectors in the established part of our system. Above these sectoral expert panels, we have a coordination council, again established based on the Occupational Qualifications Act, which has been amended in 2014 to accommodate these new developments. And again, the coordination council is a three-part, follow a three-parted model. And an important new development is that in the frame of OSKA sectoral studies, we have, let's say, regular access to the Estonian government through the Ministry of Education and Research, communicating the most important findings for this from this sectoral studies to the government for taking important political decisions concerning funding, establishing or closing down some education and training providers if necessary, which hasn't happened actually until now. And currently, we are working on developing the master plan, how to merge these two more or less autonomous systems into a, let's say, single new extended occupational qualification system for Estonia. Dear colleagues, thank you for your attention. I would be happy to answer to your questions.